I know from some of our folks that they'll be getting on late, but we're going to go ahead and start and honor the time, and they'll have access to the recording after this. I want to invite our team member, Stephen Blunt, who is a working preacher in between services today. Dr. Blunt, would you be willing to offer a prayer for us this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson. You know, of course I will. It's good to see you. And good afternoon to everybody. Thank you all so much for being on today. We're looking forward to a great time together, and we're celebrating what God is getting ready to do. Let's all bow for a word of prayer. God, we want to thank you for today. As always, we're grateful for another demonstration of your favor, your grace, and your mercy. We ask now that you would be God all by yourself, and that you would not only be a part of our sharing today, but that you would go before us, that you be with us, and even beyond our time together today, that you would constantly continue to bless us with the favor of your Holy Spirit. For those who are going to be sharing on today, we ask, God, that you would engulf them with your presence, that this will be a time that is well spent as we are all seeking ways in your favor to continue to move together with the dynamic of thriving congregations in our heart. This is our prayer. Again, God, we thank you for this moment. In Christ's name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Absolutely. So this afternoon, we have the pleasure of having with us the Reverend Dr. Carmichael Crutchfield, another working preacher who just finished worship, I believe, at Mother Liberty there in Jackson, Tennessee. And Dr. Crutchfield is in a named chair, the name of which I can't remember, at Memphis Theological Seminary. He teaches in the areas of Christian education, formation, Methodist studies, youth and young adults. He covers the waterfront there. Dr. Crutchfield is also the general church officer for Christian education, which now covers youth and young adults as well for the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And Dr. Crutchfield is colleague and friend and co-author and an insightful and wise voice in this conversation today. And I am delighted to introduce him and to give him the floor. We'll introduce the panel a little later, but Dr. Crutchfield, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jansen, Denise, my friend, my colleague indeed. And we'll jump right in and begin looking at some slides and talking, and I'll talk along the way and say some things along the way. And welcome to the panel, and it's good to be with you today. As we know, we're going to be talking about thriving congregations and youth and young adults, and that's the overall part of what you guys are doing there as part of that panel. And there's a little bit about me. And there's the book that Denise and I co-authored, Pressing Forward, Faith, Culture, and African American Youth, and which comes somewhat the premise for what I'll talk about today as to how that book came about. But let me just sort of preface before I get into presentation about. And maybe back up the slide, just look at the cover just for a minute. Let me just say a word about how this book came into play. And then I'll talk about the inside of the book. Several years ago, it seems now a long time ago, but not really that long ago, Denise and I decided to take a plunge, you might say, or dive into writing a book, putting together a manuscript around youth ministry that dealt with youth and young adults, particularly youth ministry in the Black church, based on what we both of us teach in the area of Christian education, youth ministry. And we found there to be a lack of resources for us to use. So we created this resource. And so through some interview processes across the country, she and I did that research, and then we did some other research and writing and so forth and so on. And as a result of that, now we have this book, Pressing Forward, Faith, Culture, and African American Youth. And so I'll jump right into the presentation now and say a few things about each one of these slides that will come forward. We begin in the book, and I talk about in this book about the sense about the Black church. And I think before you can really begin to deal with youth ministry in the Black church, you have to have some sense of what the Black church, how its genesis takes place, and a little bit about what it has been the thing that has, been the springboard for the Black church, and born out of a struggle. And we talk about that struggle, of course, being mainly racism in this particular case that caused the Black church to have to come into existence in the first place in order for people to be able to worship freely. And it also provided hope amidst despair. And I want to just say a word about that for a minute. That is part of it, continues to be a part of the legacy and the understanding. People might ask, why we need a Black church? Why we just can't all worship together in one big happy family and so forth and so on. Well, part of it is that the Black church, a unique institution in that it provides hope amidst despair. That's sort of what the Black church was doing, and it's continuing to do to people who are in a lot of despair. So sermons and messages and lessons and so forth come forth as a result of that. And then we talk about what caused the church to expand and grow. I think it's an interesting part of this book is to look at those things that caused the church to expand and grow in light of the fact that now in this 21st century, that is much on the minds of many people as to how does the church continue to expand and grow. Well, part of the thing that I want to say about the expansion of the church, it wasn't so much like some things happen today where people, just jump from one church to another. It was actually the evangelism, the efforts of actually spreading the gospel to people and helping people to see that the church was that place of hope amidst the despair that was in the people's life. And because of that, the church was not only expanded into other geographical areas from which its genesis was. For instance, my denomination, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, was founded here in Jackson, Tennessee, and mainly in the South, but it quickly spread westward and eastward. And so that now the church is in about 40 different states in the United States and across and in Africa and Jamaica and other places outside of the United States because of the expansion effort. And that's what the growth is not so much what, like I say, in many cases today, I oftentimes in the area where I live, I can identify churches where the church grows because they take in the discontented people from other churches, and that particular church grows with the other church. So the kingdom doesn't grow; it's just that particular church grows. So anyway, let's move to the next slide. That's a whole another story. Okay, the struggle of Black youth in 23. Why many disengaged from church? That's the question that we really want to answer, or not answer, but to dive into and engage into. Why are so many young people disengaged from church, and what does the church offer? That's the question. I think those go in tandem. I don't think you can ask one without the other. I think that in order to get at the disengagement, we might ask what is the church offering or not offering, and what is the face of hope in 2024? What does hope look like? What is the hope that young people have for 2024? We're in the process in my denomination. Denise referenced that and you'll see in my bio, I've been now for 21 years, what we call the General Secretary of Christian Education and Formation Department, which has responsibility for youth and young adult ministry. And a matter of fact, all the curriculum for all of the church internationally. But the point that I'm making is we're getting ready for we do it every 4 years, a gathering of youth and young adults in a particular place. And we try to, the biggest thing that we're trying to always put before young people, what is the hope to help give hope? And it's been over the years, throughout the years, many young people have felt their sense of calling, and either to some vocation or to preaching. And this is a sense of what hope looks like. And and oftentimes the hope comes just the fact that when you get 4,000, 5,000 young people together and that have never seen that many people, any kind of people in any kind of church environment, and they come from all over the place, it gives a sense of hope that the church is bigger and beyond what I know as church, and that church has some hope. There is some hope for the church, and we can see and we also try to introduce ways and people can be engaged in the church and what the church does offer. So but it is a struggle. It is a struggle of Black youth in 2023 and beyond. Okay, next slide, please. So we look at the church and education. That's a chapter in the book that talks about this connection, the historical connection with the church and education. For a long time, when back in the days before segregation laws and integration laws and other kinds of changes in school systems, many people could testify that the church and the school and the family, for that matter, all of them were connected. That, as a matter of fact, you could see the same people in all three institutions. A family member you see at school, you see a family member at church, and so those family members that all intertwine, and that brought the emphasis for how church and education were integrated, that there was no separation from it. And so adolescence, and I say that today, this still is an important part, although we don't necessarily can do things in public schools concerning the Christian way of life. We don't do that so much. But what we do is connect the church with family and making that connection. And that connection is with adolescents. And oftentimes, what the reason that we are losing, or we lose in this effort, is that we don't do a good job of making those connections take place. There was a day, there was a time when the church was designed where young people had a particular time and place where they could come to the church and were a part of a fellowship, a group of young people by themselves and not been supervised by adults. Over time, we tried to change those things. I don't know if it was good or not, but I don't think so. But we did do some changes, and we made things easier for you not to be a part of than it is to be a part of sometimes. So that was a question that's raised sometime. Okay. I'm hearing I may have a bad connection. I'm here at the church and it doesn't always connect right.
I think it's better now, Dr. Crutchfield.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please let me know. I can switch to another network if it gets bad. Okay, next slide. What's your goal? And the goal is, the question is, for me, always these two questions. And I believe that in many cases, the Black church, over the years, historically, sometimes, and this is part of the reasons that some of the research that I do and some of the writing I do, is that it can happen that the church becomes more interested in churching Black youth. That means making them be a part, being a member of the church, to say, we have so many youth in our youth group, we have so many youth at our church, and may give not enough attention to forming Black youth. In my book, Formation of a People, I talk a lot about this whole sense about formation and about the efforts and the work that's necessary in order to do that, which is a lot harder to do than to church Black youth. The formation of Black youth, or for anyone, is an intentional thing that must take place. I think it's Charles Foster who talks about that, understanding this sense of the importance of intentionality, and the sense that it needs to be some system in place, and it has to be sustained, intentional, sustained, and systematic. That helps us to then work in ways to help form Black youth. So that means development or the use of curriculum that oftentimes does not exist. I mean, so we have to create that. And like Denise and I did with this book, sometimes we have to go to sources and try to create that. But I just want to lift that point. Is for me, in this book, I talk about the idea of churching Black youth versus forming Black youth. And it's sort of my argument that we have done less forming and more churching. Okay, next slide. So part of the way of shifting our faith formation and moving away from the idea of just, people being in church and saying, I can brag about, I have a certain amount of youth in church or at church, is to, and I talk about this in this pedagogical ways of learning, critical consciousness. And I'm a big person, a believer that part of the sense of critical consciousness is a sense of helping young people be raised at a higher level of understanding their responsibility, or not just their responsibility, but to engage in social critical consciousness and naming situations, reflecting upon those situations, and then finding action and taking action about them. So it might be that in a group of you that are a smaller group, rather than having a session where you just, okay, we give you this book and we're going to have you read it, and then we want you to tell us what the book says, and then we go on about our merry way. We have our recreational time and our fellowship time, and we go on our way. And now more of a sense of actually naming problems, and part of this comes from the people who I think one of the persons that I used doing my research back in PhD days, Ira Shore, the whole sense of problem posing is just to seek what the problem is, reflect upon it, and what action you take. For instance, gun violence in your neighborhood and your area. Naming the problem, not just saying gun violence, but really naming what that problem is and why that is, and reflecting upon it in discussions with one another, and then coming with some action plan that will probably require more than just the group that's there. Will probably require some help from us other people to make it happen. And then this is part of what transformational education, not just transmitting information to people, giving people a lot of information that oftentimes is just that information. Like many people today are able to quote the Bible. They have the information that the Bible and where the verse is in the Bible and so forth, but it doesn't do anything to transform their lives and the lives of other people because they don't see how those scriptures engage their present day situation. And that's another part of the reflection part of it and discussion within smaller groups, and that leads to transformational education. Then there's some other ways, some other things that's in the book that also address about some ways of engaging and shifting our faith formation from this idea of transmission. So then we talk about in the book about the role of worship and music. I think anybody that has ever worked with any youth or young adults, or anybody, I really, for my mind's sake, in the Black church, this is almost true across the way. There's a tremendous role and an importance And we talk about the research is in the book about the role of worship and music. And then we ask, is there a fix? Is there a fix to it? And so that's part of what this is trying. I'm a big again, going back to formation. I believe everything we do in the church is helping to form people in the likeness of God. And so it's not about entertainment or about the newest wave or whatever, but actually trying to make worship and music engaging, but also meaningful and also experiential, empowering and enabling people, young people in particular, to experience God, to encounter God in that worship and music space. If that has not occurred, if no one is encountering God and nobody's experiencing God, and then we just may be going through some motions that make us feel good, but they don't really accomplish what we're looking for. So that's one of the chapters in the book, of role of worship and music. And this whole idea of Christian education and formation. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay.
Yes, sir. I think that was it.
So I think that's it. Okay, great. Okay. So that's where the book is. That's pressing forward, faith, culture, the African American youth. I think Denise, do I need to say anything else, or how you want to approach from here?
Hey, sir, can I ask a question real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Crutchfield, you mentioned three bullets in there, or 3 points. You mentioned it has to be intentional, sustainable. What was the other one?
Systematic.
Systematic. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, Tim, let's put that in the chat. I think those are important ideas. So what I'd like to do, given that we've got a little bit of time, is just have a conversation around some of these pieces that I think are important, and then invite the panel to engage. And if you're able to stick around, I'd love for you to engage with them.
So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stick around very long.
Okay.
I will say this, I have, today is my daughter's birthday, so I have to go do birthday dinner with her. But
of course, one of the other very important hats you wear.
Right.
Now, I'm intrigued too by these 3 statements that you made, that Tim has put in the chat for us. Formation being intentional, systematic, and sustainable. I wonder if you'd say a little more about each of those. I think they're really important.
Right.
Yes, I will certainly say some more about that. Yes, intentionality is a sense of that you really are driving home. You have a particular, you're not just doing lessons. I just for the sense of saying, okay, we're doing a lesson, like we're going to bring the youth group on Wednesday evening and we're just going to just do it. But every time that we're gathered, there is some intention, there's some objective, maybe, if you will, that we're seeking in that particular session. And that, so everything we do, it may be an hour session and have 4 different parts to it, but each of them have the sense of drawing the person in an intentional way towards something. And in my case, that intentionality is that every time that they're together, there's something that has drawn them closer in their relationship with God. And that's an intentional thing, without lecturing, without trying to beat it over the head with anyone, but activities. And so this requires, and this is what, I mean, I could even say, intentionality always requires preparation. And oftentimes preparation, as any of us know that teach or anything, can take longer than actually the class. So the preparation is so vital to it. I mean, so vital to it, to making it happen. And sort of, I'm again, just in my own context, is that many churches I know that in my own context, they have youth groups, but they don't really have any particular intentionality, except that we're getting them together and we're happy we have them together. But they leave unformed, if you will, or a sense of may have had fun. And, the question is it's sort of like the old proverbial question for me is when people tell me after a sermon, oh, I enjoyed that sermon. I said, I'm always wondering, well, what does that mean? Because I don't know if I preached the sermon for you to enjoy it. I'm not sure that was the purpose for you to enjoy. But and again, that's just sometimes people say those things, and let me go back with this intentionality just for a minute, and then I'll go to the other two. Rich really set in with me on intentionality. In 1997, I had the good fortune of going to Israel, and during my time there, it was a National Council of Churches educational travel seminar, and an Old Testament scholar and a New Testament scholar were along on the trip, and it was just a marvelous trip. But the thing that I really wanted to say that really impressed me, I had the opportunity to go to worship service, and after the worship service, the priest invited all the people to coffee right after the sermon, and that whole purpose of that coffee time was for them to discuss the sermon to see if it met the intentionality that he was trying to give in the sermon. And his focus was, did people get that focus or not? And it took time to do that, and so that's what I mean about the intentionality is that it takes a lot of preparation, and it just takes time, and then systematic. For me, I use, when I think of systematic, I use the example of, and Denise is familiar with this as well, the Committee on Uniform series with its church school lessons. Those are very systematic, that are there, that cover X amount of books of the Bible each year, and in time covering all the books in the Bible. And I think at one time it was like, I used to tell people that if you had been a person who had attended adult church school for 20 years or so, you will probably have seen the Bible about 4 times, and the entire Bible, and about 4 times with themes that you would never have thought on your own would be themes that ran in that way. And that's a systematic way. So I do Bible study that way. Everything is not, it's always a system. And one of the systematic ways of doing that is to get a textbook that is sort of like seminary. Get a textbook that helps guide that system of what you're trying to get, that intentionality. That is very systematic. It's not just sporadic, where one day you're talking about faith, the next day you're talking about love, and you're all over the place, and people don't get a sense and thing of it actually being anything that's combined or congruent.
Yes, I was going to ask you. I'm sorry, I was going to ask you about that. How do you feel about the more traditional Sunday school curriculum, if you will? And you're kind of speaking to that, and that is a part of that systematic.
Yeah.
Granted, you have the right lesson.
Yes. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It is, and it's the same way. There's a systematic thing with lectionary. There's this system, and what's good about when things are like that, you don't have to spend all your time on the preparation part of it, or what you are trying to decide what you're going to use. It's already there. You spend your time preparing and using it and making it relevant to your situation in which you are. So that's systematic. Of course, sustain means that, as I tell people in churches, that sustain just really means you got to stick with it. You can't do it this week and not next week. And that's one of the things that I love about going to school and teaching school, is that that there's a system there that's sustained, that people who are successful in school don't get there by skipping around from place to place from time to time. They have to be sustained. Got to come every week, not just the week that you feel good. You got to come every week, and because that's how you get the system. You'll miss something. You'll miss something if you don't come. And that's what all the time I was a student, particularly when I was in seminary. I was really didn't. I was always afraid I was going to miss something if I didn't show up in class, and that something that's important. Right? Yeah. So that's sort of a little bit more saying about those three things. Yes.
Forming people in faith is an intentional thing. It's a systematic thing. It's a sustainable thing. It has to be sustainable. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. I'm noticing there's a note in the chat from one of our team members, from Dr. Blunt, and he asks, I wonder if you could speak a little more on how the church has evolved and shifted away from the former paradigm of the church being the epicenter in African American communities to now kind of existing in a silo. This impacts how we reach and minister to youth and young adults, especially post-pandemic.
Excellent question. And one of the things that I'm just going off here, but there was a time, and I think this is worth the effort of every pastor, every person in any congregation, is to sort of do an exegesis of the congregation and the community, and to sort of see what has taken place. That helps us to get a historical sense of what's taken place over the years. Like the place I'm pastoring now, historically, I mean, it's a very historic church. But in the and I'll use this as an example, in the late 60s and the early 70s, there was a thing that was called urban renewal that came into the city. And what it did, in essence, was it built a highway right in the middle of where all the people live. And so all of the people were displaced or moved to other places, and no longer was the church the epicenter, because they had no center. I mean, the church remained, but there were no people because the people had to move. And what happens with the church, and I'll just give you a quick example of this. I just preached a sermon about this. If we dwell in the past, so much so, we can be complacent. We can become complacent. And so years ago, and just historically, this church in 2003, a tornado destroyed this church, and it was rebuilt in. I see I'm unstable a little bit. Anybody still hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir. We got you.
Okay. In 2007, this was prior to my coming here, but the church was rebuilt. But instead of doing the kind of exegesis that I was talking about, the church rebuilt right in the same place where there was no community. And so that's going to make it very difficult for the church to grow in the future because it doesn't have a community. Now, part of that, and seeing part of the thinking, and I did this research years ago when I was here the first time. I've been here twice now, but is that for many urban churches, you will notice that many of them, if they're still the old church that's there, they don't have parking lots. They don't have much of a parking lot because people live around the church. They walk to church. And but now people don't walk to church because people don't live around the church. And so they drive in and they drive out. And so when I was in seminary, one of the things it says that if you're building a new church, one of the things, the first thing you need to make sure is that you have a very nice parking lot, because everyone's going to come in a car individually. I mean, and there you may have 100 people. I mean, there's going to be 100 cars, and if you don't have parking, then people just may go to the next option. So that and then to get back to the why it's not the epicenter anymore is that there really, in many cases, there are no community for it to be the epicenter, because people are driving in and driving out of those places and have very little investment in that community. Their investment is in that building, that church building, but not in that community itself. And so so how this affects youth and ministry? Well, quite naturally. It was easy. I tell people it was a given. It was easy to do youth ministry in those days because the parents, everybody lived around the church, and they just came. Then when the parents came, children came. But that's a whole different scenario now, and we know that scenarios. I mean, of course, black kids didn't have cars and didn't need one because they walked everywhere they needed to go. But now you have cars, you have options, you have all kinds of things. And so not only is it not the epicenter for youth, it's become not the epicenter for adults as well, because it's not the place, that social place that it once was, where people gathered there to have voting rallies and every kind of other thing that was necessary for the community to thrive and to go forward. I'll say this lastly. I remember when I was in this church in the 90s, there was a big issue in this community about the lottery, and the church. We had people to come to the church, but there was no one nearby coming to the church. People drove here to come to the church, and so you really didn't impact much of a community because you didn't have. And then the community that was here prior to the tornado. Again, the tornado destroyed that community, and those people had to move. So now there's no community at all. And so that's, I hope that helped.
Thank you for that. I think one of the questions I have, and it's a question that we'll invite the panel into as well. One of the questions I have is, the pandemic functioned as sort of a mark in time for us to call a fair number of our congregations to think critically about what it is we're doing in church as usual is not working anymore, so now we got to think more critically about what it is we're about. I wonder if you'd say a word about how you see that impacting youth and young adult ministry especially, and if there are some ways in which we can be paying attention.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The pandemic was sort of a mark in time. I like to say that it sort of highlighted, it was a highlight on a problem that we already had, but that we didn't know we had. I think that we were not doing well, and but we were complacent because that's the way we're doing things. And then when the pandemic comes and all these people no longer can come to the building, and now there are people choosing other people. There are people choosing, even when they can come to the building, not to come to the building. And so I think as far as youth and adults is concerned, is that in part, as I think I said this question earlier, I may have said it here, I think I said in the sermon, I don't think I said it here, is that someone asked a question about youth and young adults, how do we get them back and so forth. And I said, what the question is, what do we have to offer them?
Right.
And I think that's what, to me, is the question that congregations really have to ask themselves. Why would youth and young adults come here? And even if I have an opportunity to get youth and young adults to come here, what am I going to do with them? What am I going to do with the young people who are fully engaged in technology? And my church is just now. I mean, what am I going to do? I guess that's the question. And I think that what comes to mind to me is that, I mean, I hear in my own existence that I think we have to stop and look critically at where we are. I think that's the number one thing that every congregation has to stop and take and ask some critical questions. And one of those is that if we don't have youth and young adults, I mean, what would we do with them if they come? What will we do with them? How will we engage them? And that business as usual of them coming and just sitting is not going to work any longer. Even if it worked then, even if it worked, I'm not sure it worked then. But
I think that's a wise observation. It wasn't working before, and pandemic just
right.
caused us to pay attention to that fact in ways that we hadn't previously. Sweet. Okay.
Right.
I want to offer to anyone, and the panel, obviously, we're going to engage further, but I want to offer to anyone who has a question for Dr. Crutchfield before he jumps off. Are there things you'd like to engage with him about? And then we'll shift over to the panel.
Hello, how's everybody doing? So are we going to engage, because I'm just coming on, so I don't know what I missed or didn't miss. Are we going to engage in some of these same conversations? I believe that Dr. Crutchfield has already spoken about.
We are,
okay,
yeah.
Cool.
We're gonna come back around to those, Maurice.
Okay.
But if there's something you wanted to ask Dr. Crutchfield before he left, by all means. He's going to jump off and the panel's going to continue.
Okay, cool.
All right. I'm gonna call it for the team and thank Dr. Crutchfield for the wisdom he's offered us. Thank you for bringing the insights from your research and from your many years in ministry and from your active engagement in ministry with youth and young adults. Thank you for that. I appreciate very much your being willing to join us. If there's anything you would like to say before you go, certainly want to welcome you to do that.
Yes, I will say this in closing. Let me just say again, thank you, Dr. Jansen, for inviting me to share with this panel and to share about the book. But also, I want to say thank you to this panel that has agreed to be a part of this Thriving Congregations effort. I think you're doing some very critical work for the good of not only your own local churches, but larger places as well. I like always that we're thriving congregations, because that's what we need, and I think the work that you're doing, and I want to commend Dr. Jansen and those others who are part of this effort of putting forth this thriving congregations in motion, because unfortunately what we have in many cases is that we have congregations just striving and trying to strive to survive,
right,
and not thriving. And I think this is a very important question that we're looking at. How do you become a thriving congregation? Yeah. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share. Always my pleasure.
Thank you, sir, and happy birthday to your daughter. Welcome to her good luck for one more year.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye, everyone.
right.
I'm going to make a game time call and suggest that we just keep going and have this conversation with the panel. And if we finish a little early today, I think that's just fine. I want to just introduce the panel and give you an opportunity to say a word about yourselves, because you'll do that better than I will ever. I'm gonna go in order of who I'm seeing on the screen, and that's the doctor to be, Zanique Davis, joins us from Evanston. She's a PhD student at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary there. Zanique, do you want to say any more? Parent to Zaid and Zane.
Hi, everyone. No, I think you have said it all for this platform, but I also wanted to just give a disclaimer that I have two guests with me that are hosting with me, Zane and Zaid. So you might hear them shouting in the background, affirming what we're saying here. So I just wanted to make that known. Once you hear their voices, it's just my boys in the background, literally affirming me as we engage in this panel.
That's wonderful. They're having church with you. That's excellent. Next on my screen is Maurice Bowles. Maurice is youth pastor at. I'm gonna let you tell it because I can't remember the names of the churches.
Okay, all right. How's everybody doing? Once again, see some familiar faces on as well. Also, the Dr. Jansen. Thank you for inviting me and having me on today. So I am Maurice Bowles III, and I'm down at First Lynn Haven Baptist Church in Virginia Beach, Virginia, where I serve as the youth pastor, and at Second Calvary Baptist Church in Norfolk, Virginia, where I serve as the young adult and college pastor. And so just happy to be here. Hopefully, from this panel and from this conversation, I can get some help with some ideas and some of the responses. I think I would be a part of the group that's on today and say that we all have some things we probably feel like we do okay in, and there's some other areas, where we need some better answers. And so hopefully this conversation can navigate us through that space.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your being with us today. The next person on my screen is Wendell Mickens. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Wendell.
Good afternoon, all. Good seeing you again, Dr. Jansen, and definitely see some familiar faces on, and excited about the conversation. I'm actually the, youth and young adult pastor where I am at Mount Zion Baptist Church, also the executive pastor, the whole thing, all that stuff that come with it in the Black church. I'm that. And I'm humbled to be on here, and like my man Bose, I'm looking to gain insight, gain ideas, because the work is plentiful in these here fields. So I'm excited about our conversation today.
Thank you, sir. Next on my screen is Leticia Lee. Leticia, tell us who you are and where you are.
Hello, friends. I am Leticia Lee. I am currently serving as children's and youth pastor at the Mount Carmel Baptist Church here in Richmond, Virginia. I am also starting our part in the process of a new movement called the Ministry Church RVA, which I am the head pastor for that, senior pastor in that ministry space, where we are forming faith formative work for young adults and young in spirituality and faith here in the Church Hill and Richmond City area. Thankful to be here. Thanks, Dr. Jansen. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Leticia. I'm so glad you're here. And in addition, we have Joseph Johnson. Joseph, tell us about your cool new ministry opportunity.
All right. So good afternoon, everybody, on this beautiful here Sunday afternoon. My name is Joseph Johnson. I am the youth pastor at Elizabeth Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, underneath Bishop Craig Oliver. Just got appointed to this position in July. And I am excited to be a part. I think this is probably my 4th or 5th time being a part of the Thriving community. And I'm always excited to be a part. I too am looking to learn, and throughout this conversation, about how we can better help this generation that we are serving. I know that a lot of us bring different years of knowledge and wisdom working with young people. I'm just happy to be here, always happy to be a part. Dr. Jansen, thank you again for the invite. I really, 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 truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great to have you here, Joseph. And I think the reason, if I needed another reason to have you all on the panel, is good teachers are always still learners. And I appreciate very much that you all bring that posture, that you recognize that, there's, in a lot of ways, whatever we knew coming into this, whatever preparation we had, we're figuring it out in ministry with youth and young adults, because we're learning a new generation. We're learning a new climate in the world. And some of that is learning that happens with alongside of the youth and young adults in our context. So thank you so much for that. Let me offer you a question that I think might get us started, and it comes out of the research that Dr. Crutchfield was talking about. We did that research kind of through the pandemic, and so we were sort of figuring out how the world was changing and what was still the same as we were doing that. But I think one of the things that comes to us as an opportunity as a result of sort of the reset that the pandemic is offering us is, how do we keep youth and young adults engaged with God in this new climate? And this goes to the point that Dr. Crutchfield was making about whether our goal is to church youth or whether our goal is to form them in faith. I'm less concerned about how we keep them engaged with church, although that can certainly be a vehicle for keeping them engaged with God. But how do we keep youth and young adults engaged with God in this new world? Anyone who's got an idea is please jump in.
I think I'll start off. And I'm just going to say this before I start. I'm not going to say who texted me, but the guy's name is Mickens. Y'all might see him on the screen about my jersey. And I'm just letting y'all know I am not a Commanders fan. I don't even have a football team. We had the pastor's anniversary going on today. They're in that service right now, and it was to wear a football jersey. And I didn't have one. I came dressed up. So I just went to Dick's Sporting Goods, grabbed this up on sale, and came back to the church.
Bro, you don't have to apologize for doing the right thing. Never apologize for doing the right thing.
We knew it was on sale. We knew it was on sale, though. We did know it was on sale.
And it's so small, too. You see how tight it is? The only one they had in there, So, but yeah. So the question, I think first, I think we would have to kind of maybe discuss what does that even look like? What was the question? How do we connect with? And
it's in the chat.
Yeah. So let's see. Can you restate it again? I'm looking in the chat now.
It's okay. How do we keep youth and young adults engaged with God in this world?
So I think we'll have to look at what does that even look like? What does that even mean for youth and young adults to be engaged with God? A few years ago, I was reading a guy named Dr. Richard Dunn. He has a book, I think it's called The Spiritual Life of Youth or something like that. And he has a big portion of it, if not the whole book. He discusses something called life. I think it's called life spaces. And he discusses how to create some type of God and or spiritual connection to the life spaces of youth and young adults, taking what they already do, taking the things that they already are connected, and how do we recreate a connection with God in those spaces. And that went from relationships to video games. And I would assume we could now put social media. This is before big social media booming took place with social media. So I think one of those things would be, what does engagement just in general look like with this age group? And then how do we define what those life spaces are? And how do we connect a relationship with God to those life spaces. So I think that's one thing. The other thing that I would add would simply be, and this might be, as far as some people may be concerned, I don't think anybody on this panel would disagree, maybe, but eliminate the whole Bible factor, and just build a relationship of love and care with the person. I think a lot of youth, and I will put young adults in this, want to be seen, want to know that somebody cares for me. I even think that's the model that Jesus uses, right? In a lot of spaces, before he shared the kingdom of God, he just connected with the people in a practical way. And I think that if we lead with, and this might be reversed from what we see practice in church, but I think if we lead with personal relationship and then follow that up with the introduction of a relationship with God or the word or scripture or prayer, I think that can happen. So I think, the life space piece and then practical relationship piece. I think that those are two ways, that I think work well.
I like how you led with understanding what it means to engage with God. Because if I'm looking at that through my lenses, once again, if I'm looking at that through my 50-year-old lenses, that's going to look different than, my kids and my grandkids. So, and that's going to look different for each congregation, each context. So I'm glad you led with that spoke.
Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I think for me, one of the things that we might want to consider even before approaching the question of how do we keep them engaged, we should maybe take a look at the why of the disengagement. And when we discover the whys of the disengagement, which could look very different across the board, then we're able to go back and do this. So for an example, with the youth and young adults that I engage with, when you ask them their reason and their person for disengagement or disconnection from God, or this ideology of this God-like being or a divine superior rule, if you will, it goes back, particularly for the African American youth and young adult context, to the Slavocracy that has been implemented and transitioned throughout the biblical text and this ideology of God, right? So we have youth and young adults who are disengaged, disconnected from this even thought of a God or what this God is or can be, because of the rule that comes down through it. This isn't for us. This is the white man's religion. This is something that has been placed on us through slavery. This isn't true to who we are, right? So I also would offer, when we're in this, how do we keep them engaged? How do we even get them engaged? I think one of the biggest things two of the biggest things we must do after we've identified why there's this engagement is now truth telling and storytelling.
Yeah,
we got to get back to the root ball and not be shame or afraid to bring forth the truth. These youth and young adults, they want their receipts. Okay, they want receipts. They want to understand and be able to unpack. How did we get here alongside of this journey? So we must start first, I believe, with not just, I think one of my brother Marcus, you might have said it, their life situations. A lot of times as the church and the church body and as faith leaders and spiritual leaders, we sometimes box things into this demonic being. God doesn't show up here. God, Beyonce is a devil worshiper. All of these things, but what we fail to do is sometimes to be able to let our youth and young adults wander through these processes and not give them these rules of do's and don'ts, but to walk alongside of them as they're sorting through and their engagement without saying, don't do this, don't do that. Give them the freedom to wonder and walk alongside of them in a healthy way, and then be willing to share and engage with them the truth and stories that connect back to their situations, in order to keep them engaged.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in as well. So I heard be the feet and hands of God, be, work with our storytelling, making sure that we do all these things. Another way to get our young people engaged is to simply, kind of like meet them where they are and establish that we like to call it rapport in the mental health world, but, establish that relationship with them. Because as our desires are to be, we're youth pastors and things of that nature, we want to become pastors and lead pastors and things like that. The average young person is not going to preach a message on Sunday morning. The average young person is going to go into the workforce. The average person is going to go into medical field, military, college, and things of that nature. And they're going to either become psychologists, social workers, liberal arts fields, engineers, and things of that nature. So we have to show them what God may look like inside of those fields.
Right.
Because when we're able to do that, that's when we're able to not push God on them. You're going to hear my son in the background because he did not go to sleep today. So bless the Lord, all my soul. So we have to meet them where they are and establish that relationship and let them know that you could be a disciple in the doctor's office. You could be a disciple in the medical field. You could be a disciple at your firm or wherever you are. This is what it looks like by doing this. So you got to meet them where they are and help them establish their discipleship inside of whatever field they want to go into.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Del. It's okay. It's okay.
No, Zanik, go ahead.
Okay.
I already know you about to talk.
No, I was gonna do briefly because I like all that which have been said. To Lee's point, Letitia, I want to pronounce it well. Letitia's. Yeah. I like how I agree with you that I feel like to keep young people or young adults engaged is to enter into for them to be co-partners with us. Oftentimes when we do our planning, when we do our praying, when we do our collaboration, sometimes they're not in the midst of those discussions, right? So to create this co-partnership with them also helps us to navigate that engagement, as well as a continual deconstruction, interrogation, and reimagining of their realities through the embodiment of God, right? How can they see God in their realities, right? How can we, in layman's term, how can God help us to navigate our financial stabilities? How can we see God in our marriages, right? And I feel like there's so many things going on their sociocultural level that we're not dealing with in the church, right? And so we come for salvation, we come to get high, we come to shout, we come to have that good time, but when they leave our spaces, then they have to deal with the problems at home. They have to deal with growing and developing at home. And I feel like if we're able to create that intersection or intersectionality with the sociocultural things that they're experiencing or the socioeconomic things that they're experiencing outside of the four walls, then we're able for them to see God not just as different dimensions when you get into the precincts of the church, then it's just holy than when you leave the church, but that everything works for the good of us and that God is an embodiment of all the things that we experience in different walls or spaces.
Del, did you want to add to that?
Not really, but I just wanted to share that the church has left the building, right? I think that's a good place to start. After the pandemic conversation, that the church has left the building. And because of that, we have to, as Anik said and others, we have to reimagine that connection to God and what evangelism looks like. Because evangelism isn't passing out tracts anymore or sharing the 3 steps to get to know who Jesus Christ is, right? We got to completely remorph exactly what that concept looks like. So for me, the avenue of engagement is whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's in a bowling alley, or whether it's just meeting them right at the place where they are and having the hard conversations. And I think the hard conversations comes from us listening more than us talking. And then outside of that, I think what my brother Joseph said, I think was concrete, is because this generation is getting married late. So family is not on the top of their priority list, right? Because career, finances, and achievement is on the top of the list. So how can we incorporate career and calling?
Mm.
And then the last aspect I think is significant is I know the co-partnering thing I think is phenomenal, but just empower them to actually lead helps as well. I'm finding in ministry, because the more they take the driver's seat and we just sit in the back and just let them do, then they are even more I guess apt to be involved in ministry. I'm taking, because other than that, they have no reason to come to church.
Mm.
We can watch online, right?
So can I chime in real quick? So
Go for it.
I've been coming in. I came into EBC down here in Atlanta in July, and it's a pretty big church, right? So we got like on paper like 2,500 kids. Out of those 2,500 kids, I probably see 66 every Sunday. All right. I call it's PPP. We got PPE, PPD, whatever. Post pandemic participation is at an all-time low across churches, because we have had this movement from in-person worship to virtual worship, and we've already, as young people, as youth pastors, we already know that we're fighting the bullet as far as having cell phones in certain areas where that distracts them. So now we have to fight with cell phones, TikTok, Instagram, and I could watch church online, so I don't really need to come, and things of that nature. I said all that to say we have to be the gap fillers for those moments where kids don't feel like participating. And that looks like, I know this is probably old school, but showing up to their schools, showing up to where they are, showing up to their homes, showing up to, the neighborhoods and things of that nature. Went to Westlake High School this past week and just showed my face, and the kids were like, "What's up, Minister Joe?" I'm like, "What's going on?" And then I realized there are gaps in the schools that I could possibly volunteer and things of that nature. Just, I love what Mickey said about the church has left the building, because literally, if we say that we're the church, we ourselves, the physical bodies, has literally left the building, and they're at home watching church on Sundays. I'm pretty sure you guys could pull the numbers from your media team and see, that is more numbers online than it is in the building. So we really have to be very strategic with where we're going and what we do and how we say that we're going to do things.
And perhaps that was the message of the pandemic, right? To help us to understand that the church has left the building. It's not all just about being in the church. But I like what Brother Bowles said also about the relationship, and then what you said about being present. I think developing and building those relationships as kids are coming along, being there for the different things that are going on, gives us some kind of connectivity, but it gives us also some way of the people believing in us, just like we're trying to be there for them, giving them somebody to talk to or to be there for when they can't talk to their parents. Because while we've been talking about a whole lot of other things that go on in life, kids nowadays are dealing with more than they ever have. And with that being the case, they need to be able to have something to believe in. And that's why it's still important, that whole idea about if I be lifted up. And so I just think that there's been a lot of things that have been shared today that I do agree with. I just strongly agree with two things: relationship, and then being present in their lives and being there for them to help them to navigate and to move about. Because as the other brother said, the church has left the building, which is us. The church is in us. The church has never really been the building, but we go to celebrate at the building. We go to do so much at the building, but are we going out into the communities that we're in as our communities are changing? Are we going out to the schools and all these other areas that things are happening in when we have the time, or we just kind of, writing it off to say, what, if you can't show up at the church, then, I'm not really going to be able to be available to you. We've got to open up and be the church.
If I may, Dr. J.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I don't know if it's going to be a segue into this, but based on research, I'm finding out that these young adults and young people, what they're doing, they're forming their own invisible institution in this era. So given time frame, I think it was Joseph who said that, our young adults are not concerned about marriage right now. It's coming on later in life because of other things that they have to get done, right? But I find that these young people are meeting outside of church. I was invited to a Bible study that some young adults were hosting by themselves. My question to them was, do you have a pastor? How are you leading this? But they're like, we don't have the time. We are Christians. It's just that the time frame in our schoolwork, undergrads, we can't be in the physical Bible study and they're not doing any virtual thing at those churches anymore. Some were doing it in Texas. And they're saying that Bible studies are now back in person, Sunday school back in person, church services are in person. And what these young adults have done, they've formed their own Bible study, Dr. G, and they're telling me that that's an invisible thing going on throughout, the country where they meet virtually, and they'll just do their research. They'll find commentaries, or they'll pray, or they'll ask someone from the church who they trust enough, who's grounded in the word, to help them walk through what they're going through. But they're keeping their own Bible studies. They're meeting, they're gathering, and I feel like it reminds me of Phyllis Tickle's text, The Emergent Church. And so as youth pastors, maybe we should look for those invisible institutions. Maybe we need to steal away to those areas where they are. It reminds me of the institution back in the era of slavery, where our African enslaved will steal away from all the mess that's going on just to be and have an encounter. Young adults are having their own encounters today. But I feel like they still need the guidance of youth pastors, from us, to help them navigate the world. And so if we could find those institutions through the crumbs that they're leaving for us, maybe we can partner with them to figure out how do we, make church a place that we're now forming each other.
Right.
Absolutely. And to think about that developmentally, I mean, they're right on time, right? The developmental stage of young adulthood is all about, who am I going to connect with? We have understood that to be, who will I marry, historically, but that's not the case in this generation, and it hasn't been for a while. We need to, and I just put in the chat, we need to look for where God is at work and join in, instead of thinking we got a corner on the market of God. Yeah, Joseph, go ahead.
So I'm gonna let you go, Brother Bowles. So I want to pinpoint what Ms. Davis said. Dr. Davis said that we cannot make them feel bad for having their own Bible study,
right,
when they are diving deep into the Word, because the old church, y'all need to have. We need coverings. We definitely need coverings. We definitely need insight. However, the fact that they're doing it by themselves means it means that they have a desire to do. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with the desire to do. We cannot make them feel bad for having Bible study away from the church anyway. That's all I wanted to say.
Amen. Bowles, you're up.
Yeah, just to piggyback again on what has already been said, I definitely agree with everybody, to be honest with you. That last piece that you shared as well, Joseph, I definitely agree with that. If they've taken some type of initiative, you know what I mean, to say, man, even if we got to do it, alone, let's go on ahead and get together and talk about God. I think that's great. Break bread, break the word down, and be it good hermeneutics or not, just having the conversation surrounding it, getting them thinking and talking. I think that's great. One thing, and I think Mickens, I think you kind of alluded to it in some sense. I think that they have so many consistent spaces, right, in their lives, some positive and some negative. A lot of churches, and this has just been my experience, either have a youth Sunday,
come on,
or no youth Sunday.
Yeah.
So the general population of the church, out of 4 to 5 Sundays a month, have a worship experience that's for them.
Yeah.
Youth, they might get one Sunday out of the month. And then we want to know, well, why aren't the youth here? So what I've over the last, I guess, 5 years or so, been thinking along the lines of, I think we need to get, and this doesn't mean stop youth ministry when I say this. So don't, that's just my disclaimer. But I think we need to try to see how we can transition from youth ministry to youth in ministry. And what I mean when I say that is, I've seen in a lot of churches now where whether it's Youth Sunday or not, youth are working in the sound room.
There you go.
Youth are part of the audio visual team. And this is not Youth Sunday, this is weekly.
Yeah.
You know, youth are a part of the production of the pastor's virtual Bible study. So it's not like this is a youth ministry activity. They actually have an active place in the working of the overall ministry church itself. So I think even putting them, you know, on the trustee ministry, and don't even call them junior trustees, because they can work at Macy's right now. You know, I've seen assistant managers at Burger King that are in high school, that are seniors. So I think that we can start to figure out how can we not eliminate youth ministry, but transition from what we know as youth ministry to youth in ministry, and allowing them to function in actual leadership and active ministry roles in the grand scheme of the entire church, and not just wait for the next youth ministry activity, not just wait for youth Bible study, and not just wait on Youth Sunday. Now I know that doesn't touch on the bigger relationship part that we're talking about, but if the church is seeing an absence, I think this is something that can help a return. Yeah.
And I love that.
And
Go ahead, Wendell.
No, I just wanted to thank both for mentioning that. That's actually I term this word called generationalism. I know we got racism, we got genderism, but generationalism, to where our young people don't have a seat at the table when we making decisions of a Black Baptist church or any type of church. Our young people don't have a seat at the table, and most ministries have at least 5 different generations, but only 2 generations are actually leading the church.
Yeah.
The other 3 generations don't even have a seat at the table, and they're making decisions for everybody, right? So that intergenerationalism, I think, is a necessity if the church is going to move from here to there. And I love that the youth in ministry, that term is, man, that's a bar, folks. That's a bar. And I think it's a bar because when our young people don't come to church for Youth Sunday, because they understand the Youth Sunday is going to be constrained and conformed to meet those other 2 generations' fancy. So that they really aren't getting the benefit of that Youth Sunday experience. So with the youth in ministry, we get more activity on our service projects, right? When we're doing food, or on our food pantry, or we're giving clothes away, young people will come out in droves. Or when we're doing our social justice ministry type stuff, they'll come out in droves for that aspect. And watch this, they'll invite their friends to come as well, right? Because for them, that is church, right? For them, that is church, and they are involved in it, and it's something that they can take ownership and leadership of. And I think empowering our young people is going to be a necessity if we're going to move from here to there. My bad, Tim.
No, you said exactly what I was going to say. You just said it better than I would say
it. Go ahead, Sunique.
Dr. J. Yeah, I like Maurice's statement. They can handle the big stuff. Or young people can handle the big stuff. And I feel like the question that I now ask is, how do you begin to give them agency in the church, right? As they fit in the in-between. And as a youth pastor myself, are we really ready to have them, present some songs for us to add to the songs that are being sung, and the way in which we do service? Are you ready to create space for them? I know in a particular context for me, there's some songs, still gospel songs, but some older, not older in age, but in terms of experience, will say, well, this one doesn't particularly fit in this Sunday, as bowlers say, but can we do that when it's just Youth Sunday? Are you ready to really create that diversity throughout the different Sundays and not just on Youth Sunday? And how do we begin to articulate that to the rest of the church? I feel like that's where I want us to kind of figure out, we give them agency, but how do we make this practical for them now to really embody that? Because I know, and I agree with Maurice, that they can handle the big stuff.
Mm-hmm. Youth get the message loud and clear that we want them to come to our church, right? That it belongs to a certain group of people, and that is not them. We send that message loud and clear. And Del, you're absolutely right. As you were describing that, it's like 2 generations that are making decisions for it, and that's who the church belongs to. It is for them. And so why would, if you're a young person, why would you get on board with that? A place where your voice is not going to be heard at a time in your life when you're just finally getting your agency to be heard, and you need to be heard. And here's the thing, the church needs the questions and the energy and the voice of youth and young adults. The church needs them in order to be healthy, in order to thrive. And so, we cut ourselves off from the very best of the why not ideas. Mm. It's the energy of youth that says, I know we tried it 20 years ago, but why not try it now? And I know it's going to be a lot of work, but I got energy. I can make that happen. I have ideas. I know how to, use technology to make it easier or whatever. I mean, it's that gift that we need as a church from those youth and young adults. And by sort of sitting them down in a corner, telling them to be seen and not heard, or on Youth Sunday, inviting them to play church for us, instead of encouraging them to be the expression of God in this day, in this moment. The way that we do church right now, it's not been around for 2,000 years. It's not the only way church ever been done. And frankly, it's, if we think we figured it out, if we think we've perfected it, we are wrong. Right. I'm gonna stop. So more questions though. We got lots more questions. I'm interested if each of you has one idea or one story you can tell about a thing that worked, that you did, that helped a young person connect to God, and or a way that you were able to help the church see something that it was blind to. Anybody got an idea?
I'll share. And I'm going to share something recent. I would say first, and I know I might be by myself when I make this statement. I am not convinced that the pandemic has affected youth ministry or ministry in the way that we try to make it seem.
I missed it, brother. Can you say it again? I'm sorry, I missed it. Say it. Am I muted? It's me. It was me. It
okay.
Was you.
No, I said I am not convinced, and like I said, I don't think everybody's going to agree, but I'm not convinced that the pandemic has affected youth ministry or ministry the way that we try to make it seem. I think that the greatest effect, in my view, that the pandemic has had on ministry or youth ministry is that we have declared that it has, and we are acting out of our own declaration. When I look, I use the gym. The way that I use the gym and the way that those who are around me use the gym, it's no different than we used it in 2015. I went to Busch Gardens. The way I went in, outside of them scanning my ticket on my phone, the way that I use the lines and the roller coasters and the food area is the exact same as 2015. The movies, the mall, I mean, everything that I do, school, and these things went virtual. And now if I go to AAU games or basketball, high school, football, it's exactly the way it was, pre-pandemic. Yet youth ministry is not rocking and rolling. And for a lot of churches, the excuse is, the pandemic. So one thing that I've found, at least now, is to do what I did before the pandemic. and that has been working well for me in youth ministry. I'll be honest with you, it's very seldom that I offer anything virtual, anything, because the kids that are in the youth ministry with me and young adults, they do everything else that's not virtual the same way they did. And so, and when the times that I've tried this virtual thing, we struggled. But then when I offered in person, they came back. And so, so one thing in that, I do an youth all white party, right? And that's something that a few old heads, if you will, we couldn't get with in the church. I'm 43, so I'm not far from. Some people might think the kids think I'm old head. They call me OG and all of this, stuff. And I'm young, I still run from here to the parking lot. So this all white party did not have any gospel music, right? It was all regular, as this new term called secular, and I'm calling it new because it's not ancient. This new secular term, we had secular music, and some of the adults were like, how are you going to have a youth ministry event, a youth ministry platform, youth ministry conference, and have an all white party, and these kids are in here listening to it, as if they don't listen to that anyway.
Come on,
and as
man.
if the youth pastors don't listen to that anyway, as if their pastor doesn't listen to that anyway. And so you're telling me we can't have a real space where you can form real relationship with them in what's called youth ministry unless we are playing the Mighty Clouds of Joy.
Come on, bro.
So we did that. And what I found out as a result of doing the all white party, which I started doing that like in 2016, the kids who were there met their adult youth workers in a way that they had never met them before as a result of that. And the adult youth workers met their kids in a way that they had never met them before. And for them, when we got into the word, because of that real, practical, normal relationship that they got from the all-white party, those moments in the word were greater simply because the practical relationship was great. I found out that, wait a minute, Miss Jones is all right. She knows about this. Or I found out my kids don't just listen to gospel music, but they listen, because some adults really didn't know that their kids listened, to Nicki Minaj or Lil Wayne or whomever. And of course, we had all clean versions of everything, but it was still secular music, you know what I'm saying? And so what I found out was that activity, because I knew I was kind of on thin ice attempting to do it, but the results that came, now the people that had issues with it look forward to it because they saw the relationship aspect that came from it. And I did it at a youth conference that I hold here in Virginia, and by Saturday night, those same kids and those same adults had encounters with God through that relationship building component using the all white party, and just share that idea. It was something I thought it was kind of out the box. After I was giving feedback, initially I didn't feel that way, but I won't talk too much. That's just an idea of something that I saw work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And taking the fake out of it. There's so much about church that's putting on clothes, putting on a face, putting on a, it's all good. And just taking the fake out of it, I think is huge. Thank you for that.
One of the things that I've seen work, we talk about meet the kids where they are. I'm an avid video gamer. And typically, or recently, I want to say over the past year or so, I've really gotten better. So I would challenge them at playing Madden. Hey, if you beat me, so and so and so and so. But if I beat you, so and so and so and so. And my record's pretty much flawless at this moment. So so I meet the boys where they are with video games. I call them, they got my gamer tag and things of that nature. And I haven't gotten good at 2K, but I'm getting there. So things like that have worked. As far as the girls, my wife, She is my right hand when it comes to youth ministry. And the girls come from me for fatherly advice or manly advice. The boys do the same thing and vice versa. We pretty much tag team with the young people like that. So even like last night, Thursday night, Friday night, like around 11 o'clock, hey babe, so and so calling me. And I was like, you gonna pick up the phone? Yeah, she picked up the phone and we had a conversation for like an hour and a half with a young lady that's back in Virginia because of that type of connection that we've had. We have open lines of communication with all of our young people. Hey, if you need me, you can hit me up. We tell the parents, I'm giving them my phone number. If they call me, I'll let you know what the conversation is about. If they let me tell you, because there are boundaries and certain things that the kids don't want the parents to know and stuff like that. Of course, if it's detrimental, definitely report it to the parents. If it's about, I did get a phone call. Hey, Minister Joe, I'm pregnant. Oh, okay. Did you tell your mama? No, I haven't told my mom. Hey, sister so and so, you need to go talk to your daughter right now because X, Y, and Z. So that type of relationship building has definitely helped with that type of bonding with youth ministry.
Thank you, Joseph. Anybody else?
For me, one of the things that has worked as far as meeting them where they are is just showing up as my authentic self, right? Just taking the Pastor T hat off and just being TC, just being who I be when I'm not in a place of leadership and having that transparency without bleeding all over them, right? Having conversation with them about the things that they are going through, sexuality, smoking weed, all of the things that they are willing to open up. And one of the things that's really worked for me with the context that I'm in is I tell them straight up, I've done everything under the sun. So if you think you're gonna come to me with that foolishness, hey, I got something for you. I done hustled the block. I done been promiscuous. I done been at the club all night and showed up for church, not even hungover, but drunk. But you know what I mean? And for that, particularly with my youth and young adults, it creates a space of a question that they return back to me of, well, how did you get here?
Right.
What was what journey did you take how did you land here? And making sure that even when they decide to go off the GPS routing, that they realize that there is a voice in the GPS that will help them get redirected so that they're back on the right path instead of the GPS just shutting down on them because they took a detour.
That's good.
And it really allows them the opportunity to know that we are all in this work together. I had one youth ask me, say, well, you a pastor, so how you know about Sexy Red? And so we had to have this whole conversation, and I can tell all my folks that know a little something about Sexy Red on the screen. But one of the things that they needed to know and understand is that because of the positions that we are in as youth ministers and youth pastors, some of the grace of our humanity has been ripped of us, which because the grace of our humanity that has been stolen from us, we then steal it from our youth and young adults. And when we can recognize that even as us, as ministers and leaders, there is still grace for our humanity, it has shown me, and it has worked with my youth and young adults to extend that same grace. But what I had to do was learn how to give myself grace when I wasn't with my youth and my young adults, because that's how I showed up to the space when I came to be with them.
Can you just have church for a moment? Wow, we could just have church for a moment. What I'm really loving and feeling here is the importance of vulnerability. Honestly, I really appreciate Maurice's input. I really appreciate all of our inputs, Letitia's input, because there's this shame narrative going on, and the silencing that is still there. That young adults or youth, they are afraid to just be and share, as Letitia would say. I know all this stuff, so don't be fooling around. Just tell me, I can give you what you need. So I like the vulnerability that's there, and I feel like that's so important. That's my takeaway as well, just to be your authentic self, to create space for us to discuss the shame narratives that are there, the guilt that are there, those things that are in the church that we're not speaking on that should be talked about. I know it's just important to make sure that vulnerability, and that's something that African Americans, we all experience, for context, that's something that's not being taught or shared in the church. And also for us to just look at the church as well as the healing institution, not just in the mental realm of it, but also in the spiritual, also in the physical realm of it, that if we could go back to the church as being that healing space, then we're being in the work as well.
I think of the healing space versus the mourner's bench. Right? The mourner's bench became a thing that it wasn't intended to be. Became a place of shame rather than a place of being welcomed back.
I think something else, if I can add, I think sometimes we have to learn to put ourselves to the side too. I'll be one to tell you, I have some personal hangups, right? That are very important to me, that are not really important to this generation, or to my kids, right? So, my youth. So, for instance, I'm not really with the whole new thing of Pastor B or, Rev B. I'm Reverend Bowles, and that's what you call me because we're in church, right? But a lot of times, because of relationship and the way that I am with my youth, sometimes they just may say Bowles, and I want to say, no, you cannot just say Bowles. You have to say, but I don't do that, because for some odd reason, there's something that has, connected them to me where they're comfortable enough in our relationship of love. And this is my boys and my girls, you know what I mean? And even my youth workers, it's just different. And so I have to kind of step back and say, this might be your personal hang up, but if they love you enough, and if you've connected with them in a way where they have that level of comfort, there are some of our own hangups that we can kind of step away from if it keeps that relationship of love and ministry open to the point where they feel that comfortable. Because I think sometimes it's in that comfort that we can connect with them with Christ more than we could if that wall is put up there of you all understand what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because those hangups definitely can get in the way. And title's for me, it's not a big deal. So they call me whatever they call me, and I answer to, and it doesn't offend me. And I did, for example, I think I shared before, we did a sip and paint. And it was very, the older ones was like, y'all, what y'all sipping on? What y'all sipping on? What's in them glasses? What's in them red cups? Right. But I mean, it was a transformative experience, because they got an opportunity to talk, mingle, in that respect. But one of the things I wanted to add is that this year I found that our young people was dealing with a whole bunch of mental health challenges, insecurities and shame, and it was really, really bad. So sorry, Dr. J, I actually used a different textbook for my curriculum this year. And it was a secular, what is it? I think it was Set Boundaries, Find Peace, right? And that was the lens in which we stood on this year. And it has been a transformative experience, because we found God in those moments of them learning to set boundaries and locate peace in that respect. And it was different, and it was off the boundary script or whatever. But it was an opportunity for them to be able to see beyond just that church thing that sometimes we present. and actually deal with a lot of the hangups and the things that they're dealing with. Because I got brothers, I got sisters that, you know, the suicide conversations that's happening, I'm feeling this pain with the vape and y'all know, y'all in the space, y'all understand. So they filling those holes with everything else. So it's like, you know what, why not actually meet them where they are and have a discussion? And it's been really, really good this year. I guess I'm trying to find another to your term, both secular book, whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever that means. I think that's important, Del. The whole line about sacred and secular, I think is just, it's fake. It's just music. It's just, you know, it's just wisdom. It's just insight. And psychology isn't somehow not godly. There's a lot that we do to ourselves. And, you know, I think of the analogy people tell the story about, you know, people crying out, "God save me," and God sends them a plane, a train, a boat, and a bus. And, you know, they wonder why God didn't save them. Well, there it is. And it's in a place maybe we didn't expect to find God, which is why we don't see it there. We don't see it because we're not looking for it. Anybody else? We have time for probably one more response to the question, and please feel free to jump in if you like. I'm going to ask one more question after this. So
I just want to touch real quick. When we talk about our personal hangups and what we've seen work as well, I think sometimes it might even be do us justice when we find those. And this has happened. Some kids got me straight not too long ago, but letting the youth and the young adults minister to us. Letting them minister to us, because they'll check us at the front door on our own personal hang-ups and will help us see some things, and they'll make some things plain to the preacher that we have brought our personal hang-ups to the space that we're more concerned about than what God is concerned about. And they will bring those things through their whys and their reasonings and their challenges. And it really can break us down real quick. But I think that that's a great opportunity for us to act and engage in faith with them at those moments and be able to move alongside, because that they will drag us just like we try to drag them in a good way.
Thank you. Joseph?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, Dr. Jazz, so don't let the seasoned saints hear you say there's no line between secular and saved. They run into the wall on that one. But there is no barrier between the two, because they both coexist. As soon as you leave the church, you're going back to the hood. As soon as you leave the hood, you're going to school. So all of that ties into where we have to be as far as youth ministry. We have to know how to invite everything into all spaces. So.
Yeah, God's there too. I mean, it's not like you leave God at church. God's in the hood. God's at school. God's wherever. God's at the club. Let's just recognize that we don't leave God at church. And the seasoned saints know it. They just, you know, it's like they don't drink in front of each other, but all of them drink.
Yeah. I'm gonna say this, and then we can close it out.
Jansen, stop telling the truth.
Yeah, you're telling the truth, Dr. Jackson, because my wife, she used to say in college, before she used to go to the club, she used to turn on Marvin Sapp and Frank Hammond. That was her turn-up music. So listen, you can listen to that and go turn up at the same time.
Sure, absolutely. Maurice, I see your hand up. Is that an old one, or is it a new one?
No, this is new.
Okay.
And am I saying Letitia? Am I saying that right? Did I say that right? Correct. Leticia. Okay. All right. I got you. Okay. So you just got me together, like you say your kids get you together. So but I wanted to respond to something that you said that I think is good. I think, or at least kind of what I heard in this, like, I think we should have a level of transparency too, and not just share with them the things I used to do or things I used to struggle with. And I don't mean to tell them all of our business, but we can be real enough with them to let them know, hey, I am your youth minister, I'm your pastor, I'm whoever, and I still deal and struggle with this God relationship walk like you. I know that and I don't do this out of acting, but there's some times, I don't do it every time, some words that I preach. When I do an altar call at the end, I'll go down and tell them, I'm not just coming down to pray with you. I'm coming down because I struggle to deal with this exact same thing. And so I think that there's a level of being real and being transparent with them to know that yes, I'm trying to encourage you to be better in areas that I think like Paul would say that I have yet to apprehend myself. I haven't even arrived at that point myself. And so I think just that being real and being transparent and letting them know, while I am your youth pastor, while I am leading you in ministry, like you, I'm still trying to figure this God thing out and still trying to learn how to do it in a better way myself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Final question, and we have about a minute for each of you. The final question I'd like you to think about is, if a church came to you and said, how do I make sense of this youth and young adult thing? We want to do better, but we just don't know even where to start. We know that there are youth and young adults connected to the church, even if it's grandchildren, even if it's neighborhood kids, whatever. But what's one question we should be asking? What's one question we should be asking as we enter into this space of being more effective in our ministry with youth and young adults?
One question I'm asking myself right now as a young adult and as a youth pastor is, what exactly do I need to better my walk with Christ? What do I need to create for the young people to walk with Christ better? And what space needs to happen inside of the church I'm at in order for them to want to come? That is the overall question right now. Of course, underneath that umbrella, there are different questions, but the church needs to ask the young people, the heads of the church need to have an honest conversation with young people. What is it that you need? What is it that you need from us? And most of them probably say, a seat at the table.
Yeah, thank you.
I would respond to something, Dr. Jansen, that you said earlier. I think the church itself would have to come to an understanding that this is not our church. It's our church. And I think I'm going back to what Mickey said and what you responded to about those two groups. I think the two groups have to really decide that it's okay if it's not just our church, but it's our church. I think that would definitely help.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Powerful word.
I think to piggyback outside of asking what my brother Joseph said about having these conversations with the youth and young adult as to what youth and young adults as to what it is that they need. I think one of the questions that the church must ask, the leaders of the church must ask themselves as a response to that, is what are we willing to pay the price to serve the youth and young adults?
Nice.
Are we willing to pay the price?
That's good.
Can
you unpack that?
Yes, say that.
Go deeper.
Yeah.
Go deeper, Ms. Lee. Please.
Yeah. So what I've noticed in my research, and I'll even say not just the church, but the parents of the youth as well, because serving and servicing youth and young adults is a costly thing to do. That means making some people unearth by the distance that we're willing to go with youth. Let me give a practical example. I just left a ministry, a church context where my role and responsibility was connecting congregation and community youth who come from different sides of the track, if you will, but live within the same neighborhood. Church leaders, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
My AirPod died. Okay. Church leaders and the adults, the parents of the children that came from the haves, were not willing to pay the price of unpacking and exposing and letting go some strongholds that were keeping not just their children bound, but the church as a whole bound. There was an unwillingness to even liberate themselves in order to be in community with the have-nots. So, for example, are we willing in these communities to keep our youth and young people inside of public school systems so that they can help aid to the overall good of the school system versus taking them out? Are we willing to sacrifice our kids' AAU tournaments on Sundays or whatever days or youth days in order for our youth to get fed? Are we willing to let our kids wander and have exposure to certain things? Are we willing to pay the price of saying that I don't know, or that we messed up, or that we failed you? And a lot of times that it can be the separation of why there's such this distance between. So yeah, that I could go on and on for that one. So y'all might have to hit me on my hip, because that's my bag and I'm not trying to get in my bag, but are we willing to pay the price to service and serve our youth and young people? Or is it okay just to sit alongside and say they'll be all right? They got plenty of time. We made it. Look at us. We're good. And we a hot mess.
Yeah, maybe we aren't so good.
Oh.
All right, Zanique, I want to give you space to respond here.
Yeah, I'm here reflecting because the questions are so good. But to Letitia's point, I want to ask, where are the parents for the youth, right? And I feel like because, Dr. G, we're doing that research as well, but just to ask, where are the parents and how can we co-partner with those parents to help our young people thrive, to grow in their faith, identity, and formation? Because I find that we will do so much in the church, but then when they go back home, they're going back home to the traumas, they're going back home to the dysfunction. While some hosts, it's very positive, very influential on their faith, identity, and formation, but we also have those youth who are going back to a space that's not thriving, and then to have them come back to us and then to do the work all over again, then we need to find out, where are these parents, what are they doing, and how best can we
was that me?
partner with them? Do we need to walk through the generational traumas? Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
again.
you're back.
Yes.
You're back.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry. So I feel like I want to know, where are the parents and how can we best partner with those parents to help nurture our youth faith formation and identity. So we can have that circle, not a tear going on, but that circle where as they leave different spaces, they're being fed. There's a garden there that extends from the church, but to the homes and communities for them to thrive in all aspects of their lives.
Wow, beautiful image. There's a garden there. If only we could create that for more of our youth, ensure that where they might find food deserts in their lives, that we're creating gardens. Amen and amen to all that you have said and offered. Wow, what a great panel. The future of the church is in good hands with all of you, and the present of the church is in good hands with all of you. And I'm so grateful for your willingness to come on and share. Thank you to each of you for this. As we are adjourned, and we have just a couple of minutes for that, I want to say to the Thriving Congregations group, we will be continuing in this series, and so watch for the next invitation for our next event, which will be in I'm going to guess about 6 weeks, and we'll have opportunity to do some more work in the meantime Your co-directors, Dr. Blunt and Dr. Rodriguez, who's not on the call today because her mom's being baptized today. We're celebrating with her. The opportunity you have to reach out and to engage with your directors, for that matter, with Tim or I, we're happy to be supportive of you as you think further about what it means to engage in ministry with youth and young adults in your congregations. It is our call, and the church does not belong to us. So let's do this thing. Tim, I wonder if you'd be willing to lead us in a prayer as we conclude.
Sure, no problem. Just a quick admin note. This session was recorded. What we'll do, we have a private YouTube page for Thriving Congregations participants, and we'll share it with you all. I know it's a lot that we put out today that you can all use in your personal youth ministries. So we'll make that YouTube link available to you. So just watch your email in the next few days. Okay. With that, everyone bow.
Can we subscribe to that channel, or is it private? Period?
Well, the link is active, but we only send it to those who are on the in a particular cohort. All right, because we don't just want to. Yeah,
you can be in a cohort though.
Yeah, we can work that out.
Those who are on the call, we'd love to have you join one of the Thriving cohorts. And I think it'd be great if we had a cohort of folks who were especially engaged with youth and young adults. So let's keep talking about that. I'm sorry, Tim, I hijacked your moment.
No, you good. I just want to say y'all bless me today. I mean, for real. All right, let's bow. So God, we thank you for this powerful session. God, we appreciate Dr. Crutchfield, our panelists, and everyone represented on this call today. Father, help us to reflect on these topics in the days to come as we strategize how to better engage our youth and our young adults. God, give us the wisdom, courage, and discipline to make radical changes when necessary and to make positive impacts in our youth and young adults, in our churches and our communities. Bless us as we depart from this space, but never from your presence. We honor you. We appreciate you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Just